You know, with the news that WWE has signed AJ Styles, Shinzu Nakamura, Shinzu Nakamura, Carl Anderson, and Doc Gallows, a lot of people are wondering um, what is going to happen with them. Especially when you consider that, according to sources, AJ and Nakamura are heading to the main roster. They might do a few NXT shows, but they're heading mostly to the main roster. The question is, what's going to happen with them? Mostly, are they going to keep their identities? Are they going to keep their names? Well, I think honestly, when you think about what you see in NXT, all right, when you see what's going on in NXT, a lot of the men, and if not sometimes the women, they come in and they're able to keep their names. They are. Now, true, you might say, well, Finn Balor didn't keep his name. He wasn't Prince Devitt. Asuka didn't keep her name, and when she came in, and neither did Hideo Itami. And that is true, they didn't. But here was the catch. They knew when they came in, they were pretty much informed, hey, we're going to give you this name so you can have like sort of a rebirth. Yes, people are going to know who you are. You're going to still be able to be that character, but you're going to have a different name. And Balor, Asuka, and Itami, they had the business sense to be like, yeah, we get it. We understand. They didn't fight it. They said, no, we don't want to come in if we're not going to keep our name. But they pretty much knew that they were already well known, that it didn't matter. It didn't matter. So they had the common sense to realize that, hey, if they were to leave, if it was ever decided, hey, we're going to leave and pursue other options again, they knew they'd still be able to go back to being Prince Devitt, Kana, I think that's her name, and Kentai. They pretty much knew they'd be able to keep those names if they left. That's why the name change happens. So that way, WWE, if they want to, which I don't think they ever would, but knowing WWE, they've done it before, they could pass those names off to somebody else. Now, as far as AJ and Nakamura go, a lot of people are worried that AJ's name's going to change to something either completely different or it might stay as it is. The same with Nakamura. Excuse me. The same with Nakamura. And here's why I think, honestly, folks, they're going to keep their name. One, you got to look at the person that was behind Joe coming in and keeping his name. Triple H. You got to look at the guy that was behind Tommy, Balor, and Asuka coming in under the well-known ring names, under the names that they had become famous under before changing over to Balor, Tommy, and Asuka. Who was the person behind that, allowing them to come in under the real names before changing it over? Triple H. So, who do you think might be responsible for AJ Nakamura coming in? Triple H. And do you not think that Triple H, with some of the power he's getting, maybe some more of the influence he's getting on the main roster, taking that NXT influence little by little and bringing it up? Do you not think maybe he's telling Vince McMahon, the creative staff, and everybody else, hey, people know who AJ is. You may think they don't know who he is, but these people do. These fans will know who AJ Styles is. Let's keep him AJ Styles. And the same will be with Nakamura. They may not be able to keep his name the way I look at it, it'll be the same with Nakamura, I should say. Triple H will be like, look, these fans know who Nakamura is as well. You could change him up all you want. People are going to know who he is. So, I look at the fact that as far as AJ goes, I definitely think he's going to keep his name. I really do. Now I'm not saying AJ's not going to is not going to change his name. I'm not saying that they're not going to change his name whatsoever. I'm not saying that. You know, they can end up doing it. There's no doubt they can end up doing it. There's plenty plenty of examples of people that have had their names changed, and they've already been well known. That's a fact. You know, there have been several guys that have gone from WCW when it was in business to WWE, had their names changed. Changed. You know, the same with those that would come from ECW to WWE, they would have their name changed. And when WCW was in business, there was some that went to WCW had their name changed, and people knew who they were. And there were very few that were fortunate because they were on that international scale as well as that WCW scale. They were able to keep their names. You take the Radicals, for example. Benoit, Guerrero, Saturn, Malenko. People knew who they were because they were part of WCW. So it would have been stupid to change their names around. And Vince, I know, basically bites, and I, I guarantee you, Vince McMahon, he looks back at that kind of thing, and maybe even back then, and probably looks back at it at times, and looks back at it like, man, and I wish I could have copyrighted their names. I wish I could have copyrighted their names so I can own them, but he couldn't. Excuse me. But he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He couldn't copyright their names because people knew who they were. End of story. Same with Raven. People knew who Raven was. He could have brought him in and said, no, you're not Raven. You're going to be the Dark Raven, or you're going to be the Crow, or you're going to be the Vulture. Nope. No choice. People knew who Raven was from ECW. They knew who he was from WCW. Can't change the name. Diamond Dallas Page, same thing. You couldn't change his name. People knew who he was. The list goes on of several men and women that have kept their names, sometimes because, pretty much everybody knew who they were anyway. And some might say, well, not technically. That's true. Technically, they didn't. Some may have just been clued in to one product and not the other. But still, it didn't mean they probably hadn't heard of them. But the point I'm trying to get at is, I know WWE has a reputation of doing this. And I've thought about it myself. I mean, I firmly believe that when they bring him in, it's going to be AJ Styles. Because they know the fans they're going to have in Orlando, Florida. Orlando, Florida, of all places, people. Remember that. Orlando, Florida, of all places, is going to know who AJ Styles is if you bring him in at the Rumble. You bring him in at the Rumble there in Orlando, Florida, or the night after in Miami, or even Orlando, if you can still be there, people are going to know who AJ is. They're going to know technically, people are going to know who AJ is. Don't think they won't. Because you're going to be freaking in TNA's backyard, or one of the backyards, if you will. You're going to be in the freaking backyard. Do you not think fans are not going to know who AJ is? They will. So that's why I think his name's going to remain the same. Now, if they did change it, I look at more along the lines and it just might be Alan Jones. That's it. But does that sound appealing to you? Alan Jones? Oh, here comes Alan Jones. I don't know. When I saw AJ, and I actually had a Q, and I was actually one of the fortunate fans about it was literally about 10 years ago, honestly. It was literally about 10 years ago. I think I have the VIP pass up there. Almost 10 years ago, I think this spring, AJ was brought in to take part in a CSW event. Now, this was at a time when TNA was still associated with the NWA. So AJ came in, and me and several other people had were fortunate enough to have a Q&A with him. And I ended up asking so many questions that when I got into the ring to take a picture with him, he said, "Oh, it's the man with 1,000 questions." I'm not lying. That's the honest truth. And I have a picture of when I met AJ. I'll probably upload it to DeviantArt and put the link down below so you guys can see it. But I've met him. I've met Daniels. I've met Samoa Joe. Two of them in WWE now, or one in coming very soon. The point is, the point is, when I met AJ, and he's a fun-loving guy. There's no doubt. He answered a lot of questions with me and other fans. He's a born-again Christian. When I talked with AJ, he just seemed so natural, down to earth, just like one of us and all that. And he seemed like the kind of guy that, to me, he seemed like the kind of guy to me that wants to go by the name he's always been known for. I mean, yeah, you can call him Alan Jones. I think he even said that's what his name was, Alan Jones. He even said that to us. And you can always you can always say one thing to him, say anything to him, obviously, and he'd be okay with it. When we asked him questions about what he had done at lockdown one time, and how there was like one moment where he felt like he didn't know what was gonna happen. He was in a match, I think, involved him, Daniels, and America's Most Wanted, and where it was like they were on top of the ceiling or something, top of I don't know what it was, but he felt scared or something like that. And he also told me that he had high hopes. Basically, he was hoping that cruiserweight tag team division in WCW would have taken off. So, anyway, like I said, he just seems so natural. And to me, I think he's the kind of guy that would rather compete under the name he's known for than something else. But with that said, he also seems like the kind of guy that would be okay if he had to change his name, at least maybe to his real name. That's what it seems to me. Like, he's the kind of guy that, because fans know who he is, because fans have met him, he seems like the kind of guy to me that I think, I really think, knows that fans would rather see him as he is and not as somebody else. Excuse me. That's the way I look at it. Unless they plan to give him a debut at the Rumble or on the post Raw, where he does what some of the international stars have done in NXT. That's arrive, turn to the Titantron, show that it says AJ, and then have it expand to Alan Jones. That's the only way I think fans will know. Okay, it is AJ Styles. They just changed it to Alan Jones for copyright reasons. That's about it. That's the only way I could see it working. Or even if they just shorten it to Styles. That's the only way I see it working. But honestly, AJ to me seems like the kind of down to earth guy that I think is willing to work with whatever is given to him. And I think if Triple H is behind, Pavlovich, Triple H is behind the signings of AJ and Nakamura, Gallows, and Carl Anderson, I think he's going to give them a debut to where at least people know, yes, these are the same people, but we're giving them these, but this is what they're going to go by here in WWE and NXT. That's the way I look at it. It's like when Nakamura makes his debut, he'll probably get a similar presentation of this. It's Shinzu Nakamura, and then maybe the name might change to Shinzu, might just change to Nakamura or something else, like with a Hideo Itami. And at least it'll give fans the idea that yes, this is Shinzu Nakamura, but this is what he's going by right now. And again, the same could be said for AJ Styles. If they decide to go with Alan Jones or just Styles, it'll be like, here's AJ Styles, and then suddenly it expands to something else. People will know, okay, it is AJ, but this is what he's going by in WWE right now. So that's the way I look at it. That's the way I see how AJ could be brought in. Again, I'm not saying that he's not going to change his name, because I believe he's been well known in TNA. He's been well known in Japan and in Mexico and all that, that it's going to be hard pressed not to know who AJ is by changing his name. That's the way I look at it. Um, as far as Gallows and Anderson go, Gallows, I think people are going to pretty much know who he is. I think the only thing that's going to change about Doc Gallows is he's going to be Luke Gallows again. And as far as Carl Anderson goes, he's got a natural wrestling name to him. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to play him off, if they wanted to do it, as a relative of Arn Anderson, or a lost relative of the Anderson family. You know, just to at least try to get him over in NXT, maybe the main roster. I wouldn't be surprised by that. So, but I do look at Carl Anderson as probably be one of the guys that will probably keep his name. Because look at some of the guys that are in NXT right now that are making appearances there. They could easily have their names changed for their appearances. Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Garanja, whatever his name is. James Stormer, he showed up for a little bit. These are guys that kept their names, and not just because, they had, not just because people knew who they were. They kept their names because, basically because people knew who they were. But they kept their names, as I mentioned earlier, thanks to someone named Triple H, Paul Levesque, and maybe some others in the back that probably went to Vince and said, look, these people know who these guys are. Let's just let them be who they are and go from there. So, to me, I think, honestly, like I said, I think AJ is going to keep his name. I think it's going to be AJ Styles. If they do change it, I'm pretty sure he'll be all right with it. But I'm sure if they were to change it, it'd either be Alan Jones or Styles. That's the only way. And I do see it being as a debut at the Rumble or on the post-Rumble Raw. I see him coming out, his music hitting, whatever music they give him. People are going to see him, and his name's going to pop up, and then it's going to change to something else if they do change it. Like I said, it'll be either Alan Jones or Styles. But, I'm with a lot of people. Don Tony, Kevin Castle, as annoying as Kevin Castle can be, with all due respect. And I'm not saying he's not a good podcaster, he is, but, with all due respect, Kevin Castle, I think you need to tone it down. Solid Monster, the Lex Man, the Real Raw podcast, everybody in between, OTR Central. I think I'm with all of them when I say when AJ gets brought in, it's going to be AJ Styles. If they do change it, it's going to be either Alan Jones or it's going to be Styles. It's going to be one of those. So, and I think he'll be cool with it. I really do. So, as far as Nakamura goes, I think it's going to be the same thing. He shows up. He's going to get a debut presentation similar to NXT, where his name's going to pop up, and all of a sudden it's going to get changed to either Shinzu or just Nakamura or something completely different, like they did with Kentai when Kentai became Hideo Itami. So that's the way. That's how I see WWE debuting AJ, and that's how I see AJ possibly keeping some similarity to his name. But do I think WWE change his name? Hopefully, honestly, I don't think so, because he's too big of an international name. And I think if Triple H is behind the signing, he'll keep it. But if they do, it's either going to be Alan Jones or it's going to be Styles. And that's really how I see it. So that's just my opinion, though. What are your thoughts? Do you think he'll stay AJ Styles? Or do you think they'll give him Alan Jones or Styles instead? To at least have some kind of connection to who he is and who the fans know him as. And do you think he'll debut similar to how those debut in NXT, where his name will appear and then change to his WWE name? Let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. Talk to y'all later.